I know we sometimes get silly with the adjectives we use to describe our pedals, but this is one tasty delay pedal. First guitar you heard in there was a Reverend Warhawk using a fairly subtle delay setting. Second guitar you heard in there was a Reverend Reeves Gabrels using a slightly less subtle setting on the Greer Black Tiger. I've been meaning to get around to this one for a while now, and even if you've never heard of the Black Tiger or you're all set with delay pedals right now, I think you're really going to enjoy learning about this one right here. It's got an analog signal path, a digital repeater circuit, and it's meant to emulate tape and oil can delay. Before we take a closer look at those claims, let's examine the controls. We've got feedback, time, and mix. Mix is the wet to dry mix. Time is how long the delay is, up to about half a second. Feedback is how much of the delayed signal is going to get fed back into the delay to get delayed again. And once we bring this up past the little dot here, that's when it gets into self-oscillation territory. As you've probably picked up by now, this is a rather opinionated delay. The signal starts to get cooked pretty quickly as it recirculates through that feedback. We've also got two foot switches down here. What's up with that? Well, you know how a lot of pedals have an inside switch that lets us select between true bypass or trails? With this pedal, we can choose on the fly whether we want to just cut off the input to the delay circuit, but let it finish ringing it out, or if we want to hit the bypass button on the right and bypass it entirely, just cut it off right then and there. Now, if you want to make sure that your signal is fully bypassed when you're not using the delay, make sure you hit the bypass button once the trails have run out. Otherwise, you might hear some clock noise in there. After all, this is a decidedly lo-fi pedal, and the more we stretch out and amplify and re-amplify the signal, the more those lo-fi artifacts we'll start hearing. So I said earlier that this has an analog signal path and a digital repeater. And to quote a poster on the Gear page, what does that even mean? Well, most digital delays fall into one of two camps. There's delays where the majority or the entirety of the effect lives in software algorithms on a single big chip called a DSP, or digital signal processor, and this pedal could just as easily be a phaser or a reverb depending on the code that's loaded on them. That's what you're getting with these Digitech hardwire pedals. These are solid studio-grade algorithms that wouldn't be possible to implement with discrete components. Then there's pedals that aren't Bucket Brigade and they're not DSP based. They use an otherwise analog circuit board where all the tone shaping is done by op amps and capacitors and resistors and diodes. But to handle the actual delaying part of the delay effect, that's done by a specialized chip or chips that convert the signal to digital, place the signal into a buffer, and however many milliseconds later, retrieves it, converts it back into analog, and sends it back into the otherwise analog circuit path. And we saw this before with the Visual Sound H2O. It uses Bucket Brigade chips for the chorus side and a big old PT2395 with an attached DRAM chip for the echo side. Outside of that, it's all analog components on one of the biggest pedal circuit boards I've ever seen. It's kind of the same way with a Catlin-bred Bell Epoch Deluxe, analog tone shaping, famously based on the Echoplex EP3, but with a digital component here to act like the tape transport. The Black Tiger uses a chip that's in the same family as that big old PT2395 we saw in the H2O, called the PT2399. It's a self-contained delay chip, except that it's a lot smaller, and it's got its own integrated memory, so no need to attach a DRAM to it. And it's real popular with all the hobbyists because if you just follow the datasheet, you can build your own delay circuit with not a whole lot of components. Even before I opened this pedal up to look inside, I was just hearing a lot of that authentic chip-based lo-fi sound that I like so much about the H2O in the Black Tiger. But you can also see there's a number of gooped components around it that are surely part of Nick Greer's secret sauce. As for the claims of it having the sound and feel of vintage tape and oil can delays, well, we know what a tape delay is. There's a continuous loop of magnetic tape, a write head, a read head, or two or more. Oil can delay was an attempt at making a more dependable and compact version of that wouldn't wear out. So instead of a reel of tape moving across the heads were arranged in a circle pressed up against a magnetic spinning surface. Almost like a hard drive, like an old spinny hard drive, but with multiple heads spread out across the surface. What makes it an oil can delay is that in order to maintain the magnetism as it gets written and to keep everything lubricated, this whole thing had to be sealed off in a canister type device, which has a small amount of dielectric oil at the bottom. So as it turns, it picks up that oil and covers all the surfaces and moving parts. It literally is a can with oil in it. Also worth mentioning is that the patents for the oil can delay are so incredibly vaguely worded that there's no definitive word on just what the surface of that disc is, or how it's made magnetic, or what that mystery liquid is. But to be honest, I've never played an oil can delay, and I've only played through an actual tape delay once, so it's not really my place to say whether it nails the sound of a combination tape-oil delay system. I just think it sounds really good and it's a lot of fun to play. And the way it responds to playing dynamics is also really something. I think this pedal can be its most beautiful when it's right on the edge of chaos, where there's like a single degree of this knob keeping it from just completely blowing apart into an out of control cacophony of feedback. Also, not for nothing, but I just love any pedal that comes in a novelty container. That makes 2 in my collection so far. Fart pedal. If you're in the market for a simple delay that's not your standard Bucket Brigade or DSP based deal, definitely recommend checking out the Greer Black Tiger. It's just a whole lot of fun and it's a refreshing pedal to use. By the way, I am still working on that big video that I teased a few weeks back now. I promise it'll be worth the wait. I promise. So please come back and I'll catch you on the next one.